So I wrote this before I saw the title of yesterday's panel, but I guess it's kind of related. Accountable and Authentic Learning in the Age of Unchecked and Artificial Intelligence. And this is mostly me sharing with you my experiences over the last year and something I tried to do. So just for context, I'm in the psych department and I teach classes in cognitive science. One is an intro class, lower level undergrad, it has 120 students. The other one is an advanced undergrad course, about 40 students. And in both of them I have very similar course promises, which is what I call learning objectives, and those are focused on real life skills that I want students to hone. So the most important one is figuring things out on your own, which is just be a resourceful problem solver. I think that's a skill that many students need to improve. Also scientific literacy, which includes many things like understanding the logic of experimental design, right? What are variables, what are manipulations, control conditions, data visualizations, being able to read figures, basic knowledge of a domain, right? If I teach cognitive science, I need to teach them some basic knowledge of although for me that's the least important part. Critical thinking skills, so things like determining the relevance of empirical evidence to central puzzles in the field, how they inform the big, deep questions, deriving empirical predictions from theoretical arguments, and so on. And finally, communication and collaboration in group settings. So originally when I built these classes like 6 years ago, I tried to backward design my assignments from these learning objectives, and one of the main aspects of my class, not the only one, is that students read empirical scientific papers. Even in a lower level undergrad class, there are no textbooks. The papers are related to the lecture, but I never cover them in lectures, so students have a lot to figure out on their own. There's a lot of jargon they don't know, there's some terminology specific to a subfield, there are some experimental approaches that they're only partially familiar with. And then I give them some prompts, and they basically submit a one-page response, and the prompts probe scientific literacy and critical thinking. So I ask them, what were the dependent and independent variables? Or what are the theoretical constructs that this specific variable measured? Explain this figure and what it shows and what we can take from it. Which of the big questions that I cover in lecture do these findings inform, and how and why? Imagine that we did a new experiment. If this theory is correct, what would happen? So on. Also, for a couple of these papers, we had group projects. So students in groups get a paper and they need to design together what we call a video poster, which is how we did posters during COVID, right? We were at home. It was slides with a video recorded instead of like a poster on a wall. So they had to do this. And this kind of worked, or I convinced myself that it kind of worked. And then ChatGPT came and can do everything. Maybe it can't make slides quite yet, but it could tell the students which slides to make and in what order, so even the group projects were solved. The prompts, for sure, were completely solvable. And so this was a new problem that I could not ignore, or I didn't want to ignore it, and I really panicked, right? Because new year's starting, I don't have time, I'm expected to do research, my department already tells me I'm investing too much in teaching, I don't have TAs, it's just me, and I have like 2 weeks. What do I do? But this surfaced older problems from past years that I didn't really successfully solve. One of them was that students actually very much struggled with reading empirical papers on their own. I have 10 weeks. I never explicitly dedicated a lecture to, here's how you read a paper. I gave them resources and I told them, if you've never read a paper, read these and these will help you. And students really struggled. The group projects were much, much better. I put them in a group and the same students that struggled originally, wonderful projects. There was also little improvement in the relevant skills throughout the quarter. If you look at the grades on these prompts they submit, not much of an improvement. So my goals now were, first of all, well, I guess I better need to meet these existing course promises, but now I also want to discourage the use of AI in tasks that are supposed to measure or require independent thinking, and if I can, also educate students a little bit about how to use AI thoughtfully. And so I added these to my previous course promises, and my solution in development currently is some spin-off of learning pods. So these are groups of 4 students who meet every week for 1 hour. During that hour they read 2 papers, they discuss 2 papers that they've read, half an hour each. The idea is that they lift each other. Because the group projects worked so well, I assumed if you put them in a group, somehow, magically, they will lift each other. And this addresses the communication and collaboration. What they do before their meeting is they read the paper individually. And they might use ChatGPT to summarize the paper for them instead of reading it. I have no way of knowing. During the meeting, they need to reach a shared understanding of all the parts of the paper to prepare for a quiz in the class. And the quiz is very, very short. The quiz is similar to my old prompts. So it asks them about the design, the plots, the big questions that are at stake, predicting results of new experiments. But they have to do that in class, so they can't use AI. And they talk to each other to make sure they understand the paper. I always include questions that you can't really answer if ChatGPT summarized the paper for you. So like, if there is a stimulus that is shown in the paper as a figure, like here's an example stimulus, I asked them, what was the example stimulus? Because ChatGPT would never put that in a summary. Or I asked ChatGPT to summarize a paper for me, and then I write a question about something that's not in the summary. So I encourage them to at least actually read the paper. But here's the critical thing that surprised me in how well it works to discourage the AI use. They meet on Zoom, they record the meeting, and they submit all these videos as the product. And that is graded just for participation. I don't care if you understand the paper correctly or not. I don't care if you ask questions or if you answer other students' questions. You have to engage. And I see your faces and I see your screens being shared, and so it is very easy to know if you use AI. And AI use just all but disappeared, or at least really, really was reduced. So at least during this 1 hour, they're actually talking to one another and answering questions. And it got me so excited when I first watched the videos, I wanted to run and tell everyone in my department, look, they're learning, which was amazing. Not all of the assignments are to read papers, so for thoughtful engagement with AI, there's an assignment where they use an AI as a tutor. So I tell them, as a group, choose a topic from lecture from this list that you didn't understand, and there's some guided instructions of how to try to let the AI tutor you, or each of you goes home with a slide deck, ask the ChatGPT to write multiple choice questions. Again, there is a process of prompting and refinement because ChatGPT is not very good at that. But then you meet with your pod and you quiz each other, and at the end you reflect on the utility of this learning. And some students say, yes, this was great, I'll use this more. Some students say, no, this is awful. Either way, they learn something that's good for them. How to make it work is very critical. So the first thing we need is trust, right? Students need to feel free to say, I don't understand this. I don't know what this means. And so, of course, the pod is constant throughout the quarter. It's the same 4 students that you meet with. Hopefully that helps them be more comfortable with one another. To make this feasible both for them and for me, I match students by availability. So I give them all a survey and ask them, tell me which days and times you will be available every week. And I have a code that matches them. And when I send them their assignments, I tell them, here are the days and times that you said you are all available to meet. So choose one of these. For me, the videos are very quick to grade for participation. Each of these is an hour long. I play them on double speed and I sample points every like 5 to 10 minutes and watch each of them for 10 seconds. And it's very clear to tell who's talking and who's not talking. Now you can even ask them to turn on the AI transcription, so you can look even at the text and who said what. Like, this is gonna get easier and easier to grade. So yeah, I do 10 groups in an hour. And if you have TAs, even better. It's not that much work. To get buy-in from students, and I did 2 things. First of all, in the final grade for the class, the weight of the participation is as high or higher than the weight of the quizzes themselves. So just sit and try to work through papers together and you get points. And also in the instructions that introduce the pods, I start with, why am I making you do this? What are the real-life professional development skills that no matter what job you're going to have, you're going to need? To know how to get students to actually do this well, I just have pages and pages of instructions. There's no way around it. How do you share a screen? How do you record both your faces and your screen? Before every week, you need to record yourself for 30 seconds, and then stop the meeting, and then see the video works, and then restart the meeting. There's so much instructions, but they do it, they figure it out. First 2 weeks, some errors, they all figure it out. I tell them what type of information I expect them to extract from a paper. I also give them an optional structured template. So I give them, here's a template to summarize the different parts of information. If you want, you can use it. Most groups don't, but some groups, especially with less experience in reading papers, do use them. And I often give them follow-up questions. So I tell them, in the last 5 minutes of your pod meeting, please discuss this and this. And those questions are often about personal experiences or the real-life relevance of the papers, and those I find that they engage in much more happily, more excitedly. So here's an example. One more thing that I think helps me kind of make this work is addressing accountability and inclusion. So each week, someone else from the group is the leader with instructions of what they need to do. A lot of it is simple. Keep time. You're the one that needs to submit the video to Brew and Learn, but also make sure everyone speaks and blah, blah, blah. They all have post-meeting anonymous feedback every week to tell me if they want the contributions of their peers increased. And if 2 or more people from your group tell me they want you to contribute more, I send you an email. I also email groups that have some practices of how they collaborate that need to improve. There's still challenges. That doesn't solve everything. So there's always, or every quarter, there's at least one group with a silent freeloader that just sits there and says nothing. Once they start not getting the grades for these videos, they learn to speak. There are some groups with the tutors of 3 people who don't know anything or pretend they don't know anything, and 1 person who really loves teaching and sits there and speaks for the whole hour to teach everyone else. Also not the way this is supposed to work. And then groups that don't do individual work before they come to the meeting and try to only work in the meeting. You can't read 2 papers in an hour. But this kind of works. Because the peer learning complements the in-class instruction, right? I don't have sections. All they have in class is me and whatever little activities we do. The quiz grades actually improve a lot throughout the quarter, from like an average of 70 to an average of 86. And some types of achievement gaps do seem to narrow. So the number of students who get above 80 on a quiz gets from 30% to 76%. So most of the students start getting high grades on the quizzes. They also start using AI more conservatively and or more mindfully. So you would see groups sitting together trying to figure out what a paragraph means in a paper, and they don't know. And so they upload the paper to ChatGPT, but they don't say explain the paper. They say explain me this paragraph. And so this is nice. The thing I love the most about this is, again, the learning process is both visible and accessible, which I personally didn't have before, and I find it lovely to have these videos and watch them. Often I see students, I just randomly sample parts, and they discuss something that I just wrote for the quiz. It makes me so happy. It's like, yes, you're talking about this, you're all going to get this right. I have another example video, but it doesn't matter that much. So what I just want to say is, this crisis that I had about AI helped me, because now I think my assignments actually meet my prior learning objectives better, in addition to discouraging the AI use in some scenarios. Thank you.